Hey kids, what's the Disney video you like to watch?
Robin Hood.
Walt Disney's Robin Hood.
Yeah. Take this, big boy.
No, don't hurt me.
Robin Hood rescues Marian. Marian has hearts in her eyes for Robin.
Marian, my love, will you marry me?
Oh, darling.
Long live Robin Hood! Walt Disney's Robin Hood on video, rated G, the adventure that hits...
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Not Content Podcast. My name is Jerome Cuson. We are continuing our theme of Robin Hood. We are going to be discussing 1973's Robin Hood in just a couple of minutes. But before we get to that, we have some unfortunate news that is relevant for us because we do the Right Match every single month here on the podcast. And we will be doing something very special in the month of June as a tribute to Sabu, who recently passed away. I do not feel like engaging in the conversation around his death and some of the articles and tweets and posts. I have zero interest in any of that, but we are going to pay tribute next month, and I'm sure that we will continue to find ways to pay tribute to Sabu throughout the summer as well. Brian had the distinction of seeing Sabu's very last professional wrestling match against Joey Janela in Las Vegas over WrestleMania weekend. Brian, is it a weird feeling to know that you saw Sabu's last match?
It is, because I was with some friends of mine and I texted my friends when we got the news, and we just felt weird about it because we just felt weird that, like, the similarities with the wrestlers has been discussed, I know, and it's just weird and all those weird connections, but it did feel like he did go out like the wrestler. So it's just so weird because, I mean, the idea of going out the way you want to go out, and that's very much a Sabu thing to do. And I don't know, did Sabu know something? I don't know, health-wise, that he didn't tell anybody. I don't know. But from what I saw that night, it looked like he was hurting real bad. And for the age of 60, good God, like he went out the way he wanted to go out. But then you think about Sting.
It was a very long 60 years. This is not your typical 60 years.
Yeah, and then you look at Sting, and he's 63, and he went out like the way he went out, but he's in a much better shape. So it's just,
I mean, Sting did not put himself
exactly. That's kind of the difference. Is
the physical aggravation. I mean, the barbed wire. I mean, Born to Be Wired alone is worse than anything Sting ever put his body through.
Yeah, that's kind of the comparison I was getting at. It's just like, wow, this guy sacrificed his body in the 90s for us. And me and Jerome were like talking, like, we found ECW late nights on Saturday on our local stations. And that's, similar stories how we found him and discovered Sabu. Like, we heard about Sabu. He did appear on Nitro, those couple segments in that match with Alex Wright.
I mean, I think that's the thing, is that you heard about Sabu, you didn't see Sabu at first. I mean, that's the difference.
That's the mythos about him. Like, that's kind of the story that everyone has about him. And that was kind of a cool thing in the 90s, like a mythical like figure that was only on the indies or only in ECW, and you can only see it.
And you just don't get that anymore because everything is live. I mean, I think the last vestiges of that were PWG shows. So I think because there was a buzz about, oh, you need to see this match, and then you wouldn't see it until a couple months later. But I mean, that doesn't capture like the aura surrounding Sabu. I mean, it just doesn't. It's completely different.
It's just weird too.
You'll never see it again.
What's the next episode of Dark Side of the Ring, right? As of this recording.
Right, it's about the Sheik, which, if you are listening to this on Tuesday, will be airing this evening. And if you're listening to this thereafter, I'm sure you could find it legal or illegal on YouTube.
Yeah, but
so
just the timing again is so weird because he's
crazy.
Featured on it, and that this is going to be its own episode eventually next.
Yes, there will be a dark. I would guess there's going to be a Dark Side of Sabu next year.
And what a way to go out, man! Because I was scared, so scared watching that match live. Because I mean, a barbed wire match in any sense or in any promotion is just a spectacle to watch. But seeing that live with Sabu at his age was something else, man. So I'm never gonna forget it. It's that Friday night in Vegas. Man, what a spring break that was, for sure.
Yes, so we will be doing a Sabu tribute right match for the month of June. We already have figured that out. We will. I think Brian and I are going to try to do some YouTube exclusive reviews of Sabu matches because I really want to talk about Sabu and John Cena. I also want to talk about Sabu's really good TNA run. Brian, do you remember his TNA run?
Yeah, I think that was '05, right? When they were kind of
Oh
like,
five, oh six.
yeah,
He had a really good run in that promotion. Like
yeah,
he
and he
had
had a
he had
good
a
run with
barbed wire match with
Abyss.
Abyss that was really, really good.
Yeah, and they couldn't tape it live for some like legal reason, as I recall. There was something about it the pay per view
Yeah.
wouldn't allow it
It
live, and
was
they had
it
to
was
tape it
it
ahead of
was
time.
incredible though. It was
Yeah, it was
genuinely
really good.
incredible.
Yeah, for his age at the time too, because he was still beat up then in 2005. I
I
thought
mean,
in
he was like on his
2005 he was
deathbed
done.
in '05, and then he came out of the essentially came out of the grave and was, having one of the best runs of his career in TNA.
Which led to that ECW run, which led to that legendary leg drop on John Cena, which is probably the coolest moment that came out of that whole ECW thing, other
I
than,
mean, John
what
Cena and
happened in
Sabu, that
later in the
match is
year.
really, really good. And one of the main reasons that I want to talk about it is just because of how people would never assume that John Cena and Sabu could have a good match against each other. And you would be incorrect because it's really good.
Vaguely remember that, but I just remember that drop kick on Raw. Not drop kick, the leg drop on Raw, because that moment in time that Sabu just stops on the top rope and looks around. It's almost as if he takes in the moment and then just drops the most sickest leg drop I've ever seen. Sicker than any ECW leg drop because of the
Yeah,
distance he
we
got on
uh,
it.
we also need to talk about the match with Flash Funk on Raw as well. Like it's not a great match, but it's just
Well,
very
I
good.
mean, people forget that him and Scorpio had this 30-minute classic that you could
Yes.
only find on the tape traders, I think, because I don't think even aired on TV. And if it did, they cut it down. But the full 30 minutes of a TV title match between Sabu and Too Cold Scorpio, I think it was like somewhere in '96. But man, when I found that as a kid, I was like, wow, because that was one of the better Sabu matches where he wasn't even
Also, an
watching. He
iconic
was on
theme
point.
song. Just want to throw that out
Oh,
there.
yeah,
Also,
that
an
too.
iconic.
That too. And then everyone pointing to the sky. It's just, yeah, amazing
So
career,
yes,
man.
we are going to have longer conversations about Sabu, but we are literally going to be talking about the Disney movie tonight. There is no great transition to do that. Please leave a 4 or 5 star review on Apple or Spotify to get those algorithms going. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Click the bell icon for notifications about new episodes. As mentioned, we are discussing the 1973 Robin Hood. Last week we discussed the 1938 movie, the incredible Errol Flynn version. Now we're going to be talking about the Disney version. Brian, my understanding is there is also a Disney live action version that came out in 1952. Do you have any thoughts that you would like to provide on that?
Well, I did some bonus homework because when I typed in Robin Hood on the Disney app, it also appeared this movie from '54, and it's clearly a TV movie. I had to look it up because it's full screen and there's like TV pauses and breaks in between, but it's interesting. It's not like a great movie. It's like an interesting watch. Not a lot of famous actors in it. It does have some interesting story beats where, like, as you can tell, like every iteration of Robin Hood, we're gonna get different story beats of how this character got here, how certain relationships got started. In this case, for this TV version, I thought the interesting part was that you kind of see like this kind of like a prequel of what was to or before King Richard left. Like it's at the moment King Richard leaves, his brother's pretending that like, oh, I'm gonna be a good guy and watch over the kingdom for you, blah blah blah. And you can tell he's like doing the Game of Thrones thing behind his back. And you also find out that Marian's father joined King Richard in the fight in the Crusades, which is why she becomes this royalty, like living in the palace under their protection. So I thought that was a nice little nod or like a little nugget there for the background information. And they also established that, Robin Hood and Marian have this relationship dating back to their teens, which I thought was interesting because they kind of do that in the animated version. They don't do that in the 38 version. They kind of meet for the first time in the 38 version. In this case, they have this background. So, and I noticed too, like the minstrel character, the guitar player. They have that in the Disney version. They also had this in the TV version as well. So I guess that was a nice little thing they picked up because I think that's a good tool they used in the Disney version as like this narrator for the audience singing the songs and kind of transitioning from scene to scene.
I mean, there's a lot of Disney movies that have a narrator like figure attached to it, and I think this is a really good use of it because I mean, the thing about this movie that makes it so different and unique is it's a series of vignettes. It is not a cohesive movie like you would see in the 1938 version or even the 1991 version. Like this is very much a movie that is cutting kind of from place to place. You compare it to Robert Altman. I definitely see that comparison. I could definitely like you even feel it in some of the just the sort of the randomness of the characters. I mean, it is a tight 83 minutes, which I appreciate, but I mean, you see Robin Hood and Little John perform their first caper, which is very Bugs Bunny like, but then you don't see them for like 10 minutes because they cut to the sheriff collecting taxes, and then they show the kids interacting with Maid Marian, and then you go back to Robin Hood. And that's what I find to be so fascinating is that there's a lot of time when Robin Hood isn't on the screen. And again, I think it really lends to that feeling that this is more of a vignette. But this is a really I love the animation. I love the climax of the movie. I definitely want to break this down more, but just I really like the overall feeling of this movie. It is kind of in the dark ages of Disney. It's not the golden age. It's not the kind of the renaissance of the late 80s. It's this really weird in between period. And some people have very mixed feelings about this, but I definitely think you get some really interesting works here. The Black Cauldron is a movie that I find to be very interesting. Fox and the Hound I find to be very interesting. And this is a movie that I find to be incredibly interesting as well. This is a movie that I saw a lot when I was a kid. I don't know what it is about this specific movie because this comes out roughly 12 years before I was born. So I don't have a lot of attachment to movies that even came around like my time period, which would be the late 80s, early 90s. Like I certainly have it once you get to Beauty and the Beast, but I don't have a big attachment to some of the movies that came out in the late 80s and the Little Mermaid. I'm going to include in that, but this is a movie that I saw a ton. Had the VHS, the old school VHS. Brian, you probably can picture it in your head. The clams, right? The clams.
Yes, and allegedly, if you find the right one, they're worth $1 million or some bullshit, some YouTube hoaxes or something like that that's been going on about those clamshell cases. But yeah, I mean, I remember this a lot. I didn't watch it a whole lot, but I remember the clamshell a lot. I was more inclined to watch Little Mermaid a lot and Lion King. That was more towards my, I guess, part of the decade. But in this case, I do remember they played this on Disney Channel every once in a while, and that's how I caught it. I would confuse some scenes with the Sword and the Stone a little bit, only because in the Sword and the Stone they turn into fish, and of course that's anthropomorphizing your characters. This whole movie's about anthropomorphizing the whole cast, so that's where I got kind of confused and kind of mixed up some of the scenes. But when you watch this as a whole, I think this plays really well in the HD era because they really improved the quality on this, like really stepped it up. I was really impressed.
Especially in widescreen. Like this is a movie that's begging to be seen in widescreen.
And it's not even 4K. It's not even 4K streaming, but the way they did the upgrading, and I think they just redid the lines and the colors on the original animated cells or whatever. It just kind of spiced everything up and it looks beautiful. So I love the colors in this movie. They really did it well. The music is good. And then you mentioned the writing where it's kind of like segmented, and that's kind of where I was relating it to Robert Altman, especially Nashville. This had like a feeling of Nashville to it with the cast of characters. This is the dark
if you
age.
think about it, this is coming right after MASH, which is an extremely popular movie.
That's what I was thinking too. Like it wasn't like Robert Altman wasn't a player at this time because McCabe and Mrs. Miller came out a year before this or something like that.
Well,
so,
MASH was a big deal. I mean, it won Best Picture, and it was
that, and the style,
that
editing style, possibly contributed to the style of this movie. I'm not going to assume it did, but it wouldn't surprise me. Like he was working on Popeye, which was a co-Disney production, so who knows? But it has that feel to it.
It's funny. I tried to do a search of Robert Altman, 1973 Robin Hood, nothing came up. But I would be very curious to know if this movie took any influence.
For sure. And you mentioned the Dark Ages, and when we say that, it's like they had to reuse old cell animation, right? So they reused some of the stuff.
I mean, that's part of it. It's also like a lot of the old school people are leaving. A lot of the old animators are leaving. The fabled old men are leaving, and this is one of the last movies that Wolfgang Reitherman even directs for the studio. So that's why we're kind of in that dark age.
Yeah, but I think overall, I think this is a good overall experience. It's like a fun watch. It goes by really fast. Um, I guess, this is where they start getting rid of Sir Guy as like a major player in the whole Robin Hood story because he's not even in it. And I guess they don't even need it. But then there's going to be more switches in the 91 version with Prince of Thieves. But it's weird kind of like because they pretty much what they're doing is they're kind of switching around who gets the heat. And if you take out Sir Guy, you're going to focus on the Sheriff of Nottingham and Prince John, which is great. And I mean, we got to start talking about the voices, but Peter Ustinov is the voice of Prince John, and he's like this great character actor from this era. I know him as like Hercule Poirot in those like detective mystery stories, and I've been obsessed with those, watching those on Amazon Prime, and he's really great in that role. And it's always him trying to figure out in the Columbo kind of way of like figuring out the murder, but in like a European kind of way. And his voice is so good that it works as this role for Prince John. And I don't know, just something about him going mommy and then doing the whole sucking thumb thing. I thought that's such a deep,
Lot of Trump vibes with.
yeah. It is
you
that
can't
too,
help.
but it's like such
You
a
can't
deep
help
cut
it.
in terms of Freudian symbolism, obviously. So I thought that
Yeah,
was like a
clearly.
wow. Like no kid's gonna understand it unless you're an 18-year-old going through philosophy class or something. So I thought that's a good deep cut for the adults that obviously hits well now in our age. But and I like the idea that just something about Marian is like so much of a more likable character than in the original version that we reviewed last week. She's not a Karen. She cares. She's very caring. And those bunny rabbits kind of get in the way. I feel like those bunny rabbits were used for like other movies too. I can't really tell, but they got that
I
vibe
mean,
to them.
I would say they do resemble Winnie the Pooh a little bit. I think there's a little bit of Jungle Book in this as well, especially when you have Little John voiced by the same person. So I think you're just seeing kind of an amalgamation of other movies. But I mean, look, this animation style is really hard to do because they're literally doing it by hand. It's not like they're doing it on CGI or they're using a computer to be able to fix all this. But I still think they're able to achieve something really great. I mean, I think the climax of this movie is probably one of the better climaxes from any Disney movie of this or any era because it just really feels like, Robin Hood is pulling off kind of the ultimate caper and rescuing all of the citizens and the fire and just the visual of that. A lot of fire in the history of Disney movies. But I do want to ask you. So in the opening scene, so we get a couple references to tits in this movie, which is really weird in the first 25 minutes. It's awkward, right?
I mean, if you're dressing up as women and you don't got the bosoms to back up what you're showing, you're gonna have to do a
I mean,
little stuffing.
there's little John stuffing the gold there, but there's also the next scene. There's also a reference to when the thing goes down her shirt.
That's true too. I think it has something to do with the Prince John character. Something to do with that Freudian baby sucking, thumb sucking thing. It has something to do with that. And then
Brian is
again,
turning
this
this
is
into a therapy session.
because it is. I mean, if you're gonna do a joke like that, you're asking for Freudian references, man. But at the same time, it's 73, so it's like, are they experimenting with the writing a little bit because we're getting a little more open-minded in terms of psychology in the late 60s, early 70s? You know what I'm saying? Is it more acceptable to start talking about these things in like a cartoon? I think they were kind of pushing the envelope a little bit because it's the 70s. And it's just kind of like at the ending point of the hippie era, leaning into early yuppieism, so to speak. So, and we kind of talked about this a little bit when the transition between the Apes films between like 72 and 73. But you can kind of, this does feel like a late 60s movie with that early 70s vibe of like pushing the envelope in terms of like, because we talked about how the 70s films back in that whole decade was like revolutionary in terms of like pushing the boundaries of film. So maybe it has something to do with that.
I mean, perhaps. I mean, certainly you're getting into the 70s, a little bit more risque. I mean, this is also a really dark movie. Like, this is the only Disney movie where a priest beats up a cop. Like, that's it's very notable. But like, what happens to the kids is pretty awful. Like, you literally have multiple characters in chains, and it gets really dark literally because you've got kind of rain and storms and all that. And yeah, this movie goes to a really dark place for a little while in the second act.
And I think that's kind of the lessons that were not learned in the next iteration coming up next week, where they went too dark with it. In this case, it was dark for a reason, but the
I mean,
third, the
you do the first movie or you do the first part as like it's just a pure gag, and I think you do that because of how dark kind of the second half of the movie is.
right,
So you
and
do that
then
first thing
I mean, I
to
do like
balance
the
it.
idea that it becomes a caper movie towards the end. It's like this whole setup and the heist, and it's a heist slash rescue mission, and you're kind of wondering how they're going to pull this off, and everyone's kind of their darkest hour. And I love that scene where you see the sheriff of Nottingham comes by to the church. This is where we see the friar beat up the cop, but at the same time you see the two little mouses, and they're just like got nothing. And all, of course, what they're going to do is give their last gold piece to the church. I'm just thinking, like, man, the church has got these fools suckered in, man, because I would have just kept that shit for myself and hit it. But that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be like this also Christian kind of, because I mentioned last week, Robin Hood is a socialist, so it's also ties in with this idea of like it's very FDR, where it's like we want the true king, we want the true true democracy, so to speak, I guess, mixed in with like vigilantism. But that's the whole idea of Robin Hood, right? So, and in this case, I just love the way that it kind of pays off, and you got the big fire burning at the end, and
And we agree that Prince John and Sir Hiss going into the flames mean they both burn to death, right?
I'm assuming because that was pretty gnarly. And yeah, the
Again,
king.
this movie does go to some dark places, people.
Yeah, and then I don't know how it works, but like I thought female lions didn't have a mane. So does that mean Prince John is?
I'm not gonna. I mean, isn't Prince John a tiger?
But they're brothers.
Look, I don't know. I mean, clearly
I
they
mean,
did it to
because we see King
differentiate.
Richard, and Richard is a lion, right? So, oh boy, Jerome,
I don't know.
what did we get into? What did we get into
What have
just
we
now?
done? I don't know, man. Like this is really
Is
it's
this like
really
that Adam
strange.
Sandler movie where it's not supposed to be twins biologically because that doesn't make any sense?
Well, here's something I want to point out. I just want to point out that the director of this movie, as mentioned, Wolfgang Reitherman, he died May 22nd, 1985. Do you know why that date is important, Brian?
It's close to your birthday, or is that the day that Back to the
It
Future came
is
out?
it is literally the day the first Saturday night's main event happened.
Ooh, wow. Okay, well, that's kind of close to what we're going to be talking about in June.
That is wild to me,
Well,
but
I mean, you want another weird connection is that if some of the voices did sound familiar, Andy Devine we saw in Stagecoach, Pat
yes,
Buttram, he's the voice of the sheriff. He's also one of the voices of the Talking Bullets and Roger Rabbit. Also having a cameo in
I
Back to the
do. He has a very distinctive voice. I
Yeah,
definitely remember him
Back to the
as
Future 3, Goofy Movie, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit are his last three theatrical credits.
yeah. It's pretty wild. I remember him in Back to the Future 3 as one of the cowboys. So definitely built a relationship with Robert Zemeckis kind of late in the ball game. He was in the Rescuers. He was in the Aristocats. He was in the Fox and the Hound. So he is definitely somebody that has a lot of strong Disney voiceover cred.
Definitely, and it's that nostalgic sound of his that it's like that comforting sound of like your grandfather or something like that. You know what I mean? Like
I mean, it
with
is. I
that
mean,
southern
I
drawl.
feel the same. I feel the same way about Phil Harris as well. I think that's like his voice and just the smoothness of it. Like it's definitely something that I notice and is it's really noteworthy and it's really it feels comfortable. Is what I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that they use that for the because those bullets and Roger Rabbit are so memorable for me as a kid because the idea of a talking bullet makes no sense and it's like stopping on its own kind of thing. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? But you remember the voice because it's so distinctive. But yeah, that's how I definitely remembered him for this, the Robin Hood and the bullet.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this, for me, this movie has always been kind of a personal favorite, even though I don't think it's on the pantheon of great Disney movies. I would still give this a solid 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm right there around a 7.5. It's kind of how I feel about Nashville. You know what I mean? Because it's too segmented up, but because it does give you a wonder, like how did like because we know we saw Little John and Robin Hood fight, and that's how they meet up in the original one.
Well, and
in
they
this one,
allude to it. I don't know.
yeah,
Remember, they allude to it when they're going through the forest, and they kind
yeah,
of invite each other to cross, but they don't do the big fight like they do in the. They do
yeah. In
it
this
in
case,
the 38 one, the 91 one, even the Daffy Duck version does
yeah,
the fight.
but they skipped it here, and I was just kind of like, oh man, I kind of wanted to see that, but because it's just like when I mentioned like Thor and Iron Man and all them meeting for the first time and then beating each other up, and then finally like, oh wait a minute, we should be on the same team, and we didn't get that moment, but still I think like I mentioned, Robin Hood's always going to have changes in all variations of the story, so it's kind of creative differences each time, and in this case they just chose not to show them meeting up, I guess, and just kind of the first time we see him is like them dressing up as women trying to steal money, so I guess that's funny and in a way to introduce characters for the first time. But not enough screen time for Robin is probably the only major thing you notice because of
Yeah, that's
it's so
when you have
segmented
a
out.
movie that's an hour and 20 minutes and it's so segmented. Like, again, you go 10 minutes without seeing Robin Hood at least 2 times.
Yeah, and the other thing too I noticed is that because of the budgetary restraints, like in the original, we obviously had like 100, not 100, but maybe like 50 people on set as extras, right? In
Right.
this case, the most
You just
characters you
don't get
get
that.
here is like maybe 10 to 15, and it kind of minimalizes like the size of the forest a little bit. But at the same time, when they do the archery scene, which is like in every Robin Hood movie.
Right. That's a
Uh,
trope.
but it does show the scale because I felt like they did show the audience in scale properly for that one to make it seem like, oh, there is a lot of people in Nottingham. So it was just kind of weird because when they do the rescue, you would expect him rescuing like 50 people, but he only rescues like a dozen.
A
So
handful.
yeah.
Yeah, the population of the village is very unclear to me, and perhaps it's because people are running to get away from the taxes. They're all going to Florida, I
Or they're
guess.
just
Maybe.
dying because they can't afford to eat anymore. Good
Yeesh.
God. Yeah.
All right.
Again, no taxation without representation, people.
All right. Next week we are going to discuss 1991's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. What a movie! We will discuss it next week. For Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.